"You in next?" asked Ellerby. Mike nodded. "It's getting trickier every minute," said Ellerby. "The only thing is, if we can only stay in we might have a chance. The wicket'll get better, and I don't believe they've any bowling at all, bar de Freece. By George, Bob's out. No, he isn't." Bob had jumped out at one of de Freece's slows, as Ellerby had done, and had nearly met the same fate. The wicket keeper, however, had fumbled the ball. "That's the way I was had," said Ellerby. "That man's keeping such a jolly good length that you don't know whether to stay in your ground or go out at them. If only somebody would knock him off his length, I believe we might win yet." The same idea apparently occurred to Burgess. He came to where Mike was sitting. "I'm going to shove you down one, Jackson," he said. "I shall go in next myself and swipe, and try and knock that man de Freece off." "All right," said Mike. He was not quite sure whether he was glad or sorry at the respite. "It's a pity old Wyatt isn't here," said Ellerby. "This is just the sort of time when he might have come off." "Bob's broken his egg," said Mike. "Good man. Every little helps." "Oh, you silly ass, get back." Berridge had called Bob for a short run that was obviously no run. Third man was returning the ball as the batsman crossed. The next moment the wicket keeper had the bails off. Berridge was out by a yard. 41 for 4, said Ellerby. "Help." Burgess began his campaign against de Freece by skying his first ball over cover's head to the boundary. A howl of delight went up from the school, which was repeated fortissimo, when, more by accident than by accurate timing, the captain put on 2 more 4s past extra cover. The bowler's cheerful smile never varied. Whether Burgess would have knocked de Freece off his length or not was a question that was destined to remain unsolved. For in the middle of the other bowler's over, Bob hit a single. The batsman crossed, and Burgess had his leg stump uprooted while trying a gigantic pull stroke. The melancholy youth put up the figures, 54, 5, 12, on the board. Mike, as he walked out of the pavilion to join Bob, was not conscious of any particular nervousness. It had been an ordeal having to wait and look on while wickets fell, but now that the time of inaction was at an end, he felt curiously composed. When he had gone out to bat against the M.C.C. on the occasion of his first appearance for the school, he experienced a quaint sensation of unreality. He seemed to be watching his body walking to the wickets, as if it were some one else's. There was no sense of individuality. But now his feelings were different. He was cool. He noticed small things: mid-off chewing bits of grass, the bowler retying the scarf round his waist, little patches of brown where the turf had been worn away. He took guard with a clear picture of the positions of the fieldsmen photographed on his brain. Fitness, which in a batsman exhibits itself mainly in an increased power of seeing the ball, is one of the most inexplicable things connected with cricket. It has nothing, or very little, to do with actual health. A man may come out of a sick room with just that extra quickness in sighting the ball that makes all the difference. Or he may be in perfect training and play inside straight half volleys. Mike would not have said that he felt more than ordinarily well that day. Indeed, he was rather painfully conscious of having bolted his food at lunch. But something seemed to whisper to him, as he settled himself to face the bowler, that he was at the top of his batting form. A difficult wicket always brought out his latent powers as a bat. It was a standing mystery with the sporting press how Joe Jackson managed to collect 50s and 60s on wickets that completely upset men who were, apparently, finer players. On days when the Olympians of the cricket world were bringing their averages down with ducks and singles, Joe would be in his element, watching the ball and pushing it through the slips as if there were no such thing as a tricky wicket. And Mike took after Joe. A single off the 5th ball of the over opened his score and brought him to the opposite end. Bob played ball number 6 back to the bowler, and Mike took guard preparatory to facing de Freece. The Ripton slow bowler took a long run, considering his pace. In the early part of an innings he often trapped the batsmen in this way, by leading them to expect a faster ball than he actually sent down. A queer little jump in the middle of the run increased the difficulty of watching him. The smiting he had received from Burgess in the previous over had not had the effect of knocking de Vries off his length. The ball was too short to reach with comfort, and not short enough to take liberties with. It pitched slightly to leg, and whipped in quickly. Mike had faced half left and stepped back. The increased speed of the ball, after it had touched the ground, beat him. The ball hit his right pad. "'S that?" shouted Mid-on. Mid-on has a habit of appealing for LBW in school matches. De Vries said nothing. The Ripton bowler was as conscientious in the matter of appeals as a good bowler should be. He had seen that the ball had pitched off the leg stump. The umpire shook his head. Mid-on tried to look as if he had not spoken. Mike prepared himself for the next ball with a glow of confidence. He felt that he knew where he was now. Till then he had not thought the wicket was so fast. The two balls he had played at the other end had told him nothing. They had been well pitched up, and he had smothered them. He knew what to do now. He had played on wickets of this pace at home against Saunders's bowling, and Saunders had shown him the right way to cope with them. The next ball was of the same length, but this time off the off stump. Mike jumped out and hit it before it had time to break. It flew along the ground through the gap between cover and extra cover. A comfortable 3. Bob played out the over with elaborate care. Off the second ball of the other man's over, Mike scored his first boundary. It was a long hop on the off. He banged it behind point to the terrace bank. The last ball of the over, a half volley to leg, he lifted over the other boundary. "60 up," said Ellerby in the pavilion, as the umpire signalled another no ball. "By George, I believe these chaps are going to knock off the runs. Young Jackson looks as if he was in for a century." "You ass," said Berridge. "Don't say that, or he's certain to get out." Berridge was one of those who are skilled in cricket superstitions. But Mike did not get out. He took 7 off de Vries's next over by means of 2 cuts and a drive, and with Bob still exhibiting a stolid and rock-like defence, the score mounted to 80, thence to 90, and so, mainly by singles, to 100. At 104, when the wicket had put on exactly 50, Bob fell to a combination of de Vries and extra cover. He had stuck like a limpet for an hour and a quarter, and made 21. Mike watched him go with much the same feelings as those of a man who turns away from the platform after seeing a friend off on a long railway journey. His departure upset the scheme of things. For himself he had no fear now. He might possibly get out off his next ball, but he felt set enough to stay at the wickets till nightfall. He had had narrow escapes from de Vries, but he was full of that conviction which comes to all batsmen on occasion, that this was his day. He had made 26, and the wicket was getting easier. He could feel the sting going out of the bowling every over. Henfrey, the next man in, was a promising rather than an effective bat. He had an excellent style, but he was uncertain. 2 years later, when he captained the Wrykyn teams, he made a lot of runs. But this season his batting had been spasmodic. Today he never looked like settling down. He survived an over from de Vries, and hit a fast change bowler who had been put on at the other end for a couple of fluky 4s. Then Mike got the bowling for 3 consecutive overs, and raised the score to 126. A bye brought Henfrey to the batting end again, and de Vries's pet googly, which had not been much in evidence hitherto, led to his snicking an easy catch into Short Slip's hands. 127 for 7 against a total of 166 gives the impression that the batting side has the advantage. In the present case, however, it was Ripton who were really in the better position. Apparently, Wrykyn had 3 more wickets to fall. Practically they had only one, for neither Ashe nor Grant nor Devenish